myths, legends, folk tales, old wives' tales, superstitions, urban legends. These are some of the words we use to explain away the unexplainable. These stories that have been labeled such abound throughout history and across multitudes of cultures. They fade into the mist of time, only to emerge decades later, spreading through word of mouth and coming to life off the dusty pages of ancient books, tablets, and paintings. Stories and imagery of giant serpents that soared through the clouds exist in China, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Australia, Greece, the Americas, Europe, and more. Giant birds of varying characteristics can be found throughout just as many cultures. The roc, firebird, phoenix, thunderbird, hraesvelgr, griffin, pegasus, and fangwang. Humanoid figures of short stature, such as dwarves, gnomes, goblins, pukwudgie, elves, fairies, redcaps, and brownies, spread mischief, unbound by ethnic and cultural restraints. The Bible speaks of humanoids of extraordinarily large stature, giants. Some believe these to have been the result of human women having children fathered by fallen angels, the Nephilim. The list goes on and on. Countless creatures that were, during various times throughout history, believed to be far more than mere myth. So how is it that so many cultures have similar myths from a time when travel across vast distances separating these various cultures, was unheard of, if not impossible? When few, if any, outside cultural and ethnic boundaries spoke, much less understood, the languages of those within. Were these stories mothers and grandmothers told children to scare them into behaving and doing as they were told? Or were they genuine warnings to be ever aware of things that lurk in the dark, just outside the corner of our eyes, just beyond our field of vision? Some theories state that these beings may have existed at one point in time and have simply gone extinct, hunted into the history pages by knights in shining armor, soon to fade into myth and legend. Still others believe they never existed and were simply imaginings or misinterpretations by scared travelers, a shadow of an otherwise normal creature seen to be larger and more extraordinary than the reality. To understand my theory, you will need to first understand a belief shared by numerous religions across many cultures. That belief dwells primarily around the concept of life and death, the world of the living and that of the dead. Second, we will need to look at the darker sides of history, those moments written in blood, stories of tragedy, conflict, and the loss of countless lives. My name is Josh, and I will be your host. So grab a drink, sit back, and join me as we venture into the unknown. We travel back through time to the fall of 9th century Ireland. A great gathering is taking place outside the village as the first full moon of Scorpio begins to appear in the evening sky. Special bonfires are being lit, and cattle are brought down from the pastures to be offered up in sacrifice. Families cook foods favored by departed loved ones in hopes of attracting their spirits to visit on this sacred night. Food and drink are offered to appease the spirits and the gods to ensure the people and livestock would survive the winter. Costumes are worn for mumming and guising, going door to door and reciting verses in exchange for food. Some say the costumes were worn as a disguise against, and pumpkins carved to distract wandering spirits. Rituals of divination are performed, and the celebration ensues. This is, by some accounts, the origin of Samhain, or Halloween, as it is known today. Mumming and guising became trick-or-treating, and the deeper meaning of the night has been mostly lost to time and the rise of other religions. But to some, it is still celebrated as it always has been, as the night the veil between this world and the spirit world is thinnest. Next, we travel to New England, 1675. This marks a dark period for Native Americans and English settlers. Prior to this time, a peace existed between the natives and the colonists. This peace was held together by a treaty between and signed by Chief Massasoit of the Wampanoag and Governor John Carver of the Plymouth Colony on March 22, 1621. Massasoit's son, Metacom, did not share his father's views of English settlers. After Massasoit's passing in 1661, Metacom would rise to take his father's place as Wampanoag chief in 1662. After repeated violations of the treaty between his father and the English, Metacom began making plans of war. This would ultimately lead to King Philip's War, also known as Metacom's Rebellion. King Philip was the name English had for Metacom, as that is what they believed a chief to be. This was a devastating conflict between English settlers, their Native American allies, and a coalition of indigenous tribes led by Metacom. Though lesser known, King Philip's War was one of the bloodiest in American history, spanning across Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. It marked the final major effort by Native Americans to drive English settlers back across the sea, and would shape the futures of both Native Americans and English settlers alike. The peaceful coexistence between Native Americans and colonists began to crumble due to several factors. English colonies expanded rapidly inland, encroaching ever more into Native American lands and leading to the loss of valuable hunting and fishing grounds. Colonial authorities placed increasing pressure on Native Americans to follow English laws and court systems, significantly impacting their way of life. Colonists pushed that Native Americans should surrender their arms, born of a desire to maintain control over lands and resources. 1675, Wassassman, known by the English as John Sassamon, a Native American Christian convert and informant, warned the English of an impending attack by Native American forces. He was later found dead with his neck broken. 3 Wampanoag men were accused and hanged by the Plymouth Colony for John's murder. This execution served as the breaking point in an already tenuous coexistence. The ensuing war consisted of brutal guerrilla tactics, raids on colonial and Native American settlements alike, and a significant loss of life on both sides. The attack on Swansea, Massachusetts in June 1675 would be the first of many Native American raids on English settlements. It left 9 settlers dead and 2 mortally wounded. A great swamp fight on December 19, 1675, was a preemptive strike on a Narragansett fort in South Kingston, Rhode Island. After breaching the fort, the English set fire to wigwams, killing as many as 600 men, women, and children. Those who survived were forced out into the storm and the cold.
In the chilling frost of a relentless snowstorm, the air fills with the acrid scent of burning wood. The cries of displaced families echo through the barren landscape as a group of Native Americans is forced to leave their homes, their silhouettes casting long shadows on the pristine snow. The leader of the Native American group turns to his people, his voice strong and resolute despite the harsh conditions. We shall weather this storm, as elders and young alike move forward, each step carving a new path in the snow.
On February 10th, a force of Native Americans attacked Lancaster, Massachusetts, burning houses, killing 7 inhabitants who resisted, and taking several prisoners, marking a period of intense fear for inland settlements. Native forces burned the city of Providence to the ground as they pushed the colonial frontier back toward the sea in March of 1676. There were few, if any, casualties in the destruction of Providence, as most of the inhabitants had already fled before the attack. Plymouth and Marlborough were included in raids by Native Americans into the heart of the English colonies in an attempt to cripple the colonial militia, leading to several deaths, most notably at Marlborough. The last great victory by Native forces, the Sudbury Fight, took place in April, when colonial soldiers were lured into an ambush at Green Hill. The hills were set afire, the smoke and flames forcing the soldiers from the high ground, where they were set upon by Native American forces. While a major victory for Native Americans, it would be their last, as they began to run out of warriors and supplies shortly thereafter. By the end of the winter, the Native coalition was worn down. Having been unable to plant crops the previous summer or fish at their traditional grounds during the winter, they faced starvation and disease by the spring of 1676. Metacom, seeing that defeat was imminent, fled to his ancestral home at Mount Hope in Rhode Island. He was betrayed and his location revealed by a Native American informant. In a final confrontation with colonial militia, led by Benjamin Church, Metacom was shot and killed by a Pecosset scout allied with the English as he fled through a swamp near Bristol, Rhode Island. His body was quartered and he was beheaded. His head was displayed on a pike at Plymouth for 25 years as a warning to other Native Americans. The war ended in 1676 in southern New England, though fighting continued in the north until 1678. The consequences of King Philip's War were catastrophic. Thousands of Native Americans were killed, and many survivors, including Metacom's own wife and son, were sold into slavery. The political powers of tribes like the Wampanoag and Narragansett were effectively broken. More than 12 colonial towns were completely destroyed, and the economy of the New England colonies was crippled for years. Roughly 10% of the colonial military-aged male population was killed. The colonists fought the war largely without help from England, fostering a burgeoning sense of American identity, which would ultimately lead to New England claiming their independence. 16 years after the events of King Philip's War, Salem, Massachusetts would be known for its witch trials, a significant event of mass hysteria that shook this New England settlement and claimed the lives of 20 individuals by execution and at least 5 more in disease-ridden jails. Now today, it is popularly known as the witch capital of the United States and host to more than its fair share of paranormal happenings, including hauntings and negative energies. A creature known as the Dover Demon would show itself to a handful of witnesses in the Massachusetts town of its namesake. This creature was described as having a large watermelon-shaped head, spindly limbs, hairless and sandpaper-like skin, and large glowing orange or green eyes. Preceding this event by only one day, a UFO was reportedly sighted in the neighboring town of Medfield, and another in neighboring Westfield a little over a year later in July of 1978. Many tales are told of creatures lurking in the New England coastal waters, the Gloucester sea serpent being perhaps the most notable. This massive serpentine creature is reported to have been seen by hundreds of witnesses in the early 19th century. In 1817, a group of fishermen witnessed this sea serpent and described it as being over 100 feet long, with a horse-like head, humped back, and writhing tail. Sightings were so numerous and consistent that this cryptid attracted the attention of and launched an investigation by the Linnean Society of New England, a society focused on the promotion of natural history. Lastly, southern Massachusetts has its very own version of the Bermuda Triangle. The Bridgewater Triangle, named for the town of Bridgewater near its center, encompasses a large swath of Massachusetts, from the northern point at Abington to southeastern Freetown and southwestern Rehoboth. While much of Massachusetts has its legends of bizarre happenings and sightings, the Bridgewater Triangle seems to be a focal point of otherworldly events. Notable sites of paranormal activity include Hockomock Swamp, Gray Lodge, Taunton, Berkeley, and the home of Lizzie Borden. There are reported sightings of Bigfoot, Thunderbirds, giant serpents, mischievous pukwudgie, UFOs, Native American ghostly apparitions, and orbs within the forests of the area. It is alleged that the forests near Assonet, Massachusetts, witnessed satanic cult activity in the 70s and 80s, including rituals conducted by cult murderers Carl Drew and Robin Murphy. This area has it all. In July of 2021, myself, along with my partner and a group of friends, would journey to Massachusetts to check out some of these legends ourselves. We toured Salem, including historic Salem and the Witch Museum. I swam in the very waters where the Gloucester serpent was reported to have lived. My partner and I took a ferry to Martha's Vineyard, where he would propose to me. We drove to Pittsfield, where I met and interviewed a fellow paranormal enthusiast, Joe Derwin. We toured the home of Lizzie Borden. And finally, we explored Assonet Ledge. Salem boasts countless stores, each with an array of gemstones, magical components, jewelry, books, herbs, and more. Professional photographers will transport your likeness back to colonial days, cloaked and lurking in the woods or standing over a smoking cauldron. The Witch Museum keeps alive and unforgotten the tragic events of the witch trials and the cruelty and hopelessness the accused faced. Take a selfie with a statue of bewitched Elizabeth Montgomery and the impending likeness of founding father Roger Conant. Lizzie Borden's home was fascinating, a time capsule of one of history's unsolved murders. Sit in the very place where Andrew Borden was found dead. Spend the night if you're feeling brave. And be sure to grab a creepy doll souvenir from the gift shop. It makes a great Halloween decoration. The waters outside Gloucester were refreshing, despite my ruining a smartwatch in the salt water. Unfortunately, I did not get to swim with a giant serpent. Joe shared some interesting historical points about the Northampton witch trials, wild man hoaxes, and gave us a great tour of Pittsfield, and even told me about one possible cryptid event that he experienced involving a black dog. The black dog is an Old English cryptid believed to be a harbinger of death or tragedy, but may sometimes present itself to aid lost travelers. Martha's Vineyard was beautiful. We bicycled along the coast, had a delicious lunch, photographed the gingerbread houses, and of course, grabbed a few souvenirs. One of our last adventures was Freetown Fall River State Park, where a gravel trail will lead you to Assinet Ledge. The moment we walked into this park, it felt like we were being watched. We proceeded in, the gravel crunching underfoot, until the path split left and right. We had brought shortwave radios in case cell signal was spotty, so we broke into two groups. My partner and I took the left path, our friends the right. I had bought an EMF reader and had it with me, so we took periodic readings as we walked. There were a couple of random spikes at some large rocks off the path, but nothing especially significant. Yet. Our friends radioed in at one point that they had heard a strange noise in the woods. But my partner and I never heard anything. My partner noticed a trail at one point that cut off into the woods on our right, and we decided to investigate. This is where things started to get creepy. The trail led to a small man-made clearing, a large rock or boulder buried at its center. The trees and other exposed rocks around this opening were graffitied with inverted pentagrams, upside-down crosses, and the numbers 666. I checked the EMF, and it gave me one of the highest readings I have received to date, surpassed only by one my sister received at the Myrtles Plantation in Louisiana. But that is another story. Having seen all we needed to see of this, I suspect, satanic ritual site, we made our way back to the trail and continued on. A short time later, we made our way to Assinet Ledge, where the paths that had divided us rejoined. We arrived shortly ahead of our friends. Stepping from the gravel and dirt to the rock that made up the ledge was like stepping through an energy field, an ethereal shift. Everywhere we looked was graffiti telling people to jump, insisting on hopelessness and lack of love. It was like taking an empathic punch to the stomach. The air was thick with negative emotions and soul-crushing energy. It was hard to appreciate the view the ledge offered, as the atmosphere of the place and the hateful graffiti served as an unfaltering distraction. A few areas had graffiti that attempted to push back against the negativity, maybe a handful of messages of hope and positivity. Legend alleges the granite of the ledge houses evil spirits, and that wherever the granite is taken or used, the evil follows. I do not know that I would call this place evil, and I'm not even certain that what we were feeling was real or a subconscious response to the messages, perhaps triggering deep-seated feelings we all live with every day. But I do feel sorry for the people who wrote these messages. I feel sorry for anyone who feels so hopeless that their response is to pass along that hopelessness. So, going back to the veil between worlds, scientists are actively trying to prove the existence of other dimensions. And there are those that theorize that paranormal events and cryptid sightings occur more in places where the veil between dimensions is thin, where portals allow things to pass through to our world. My theory is that the spirit world, where our souls go when we die, is just one of many dimensions. When a spirit passes from this dimension over to the spirit dimension, perhaps they do so through a door or a curtain. What must happen then when many spirits pass through in one place at the same time? What if the veil that thins at Samhain is not simply a veil between the world of the living and the dead, but a veil separating countless realities? Could there exist a dimension where fantastic winged creatures really do soar through the sky, or one where goblins and gnomes dwell deep within mountains, where dogmen, loup-garou, and werewolves lurk in shadowy forests? Could the events of King Philip's War and other tragedies like the witch trials have caused a rift in reality, Could the passage of countless spirits into the afterlife have left the veil torn asunder? I leave this for you to decide. The great thing about exploring the unknown is that no one can say definitively whether it does or does not exist. I cannot say whether I believe or not, but I intend to keep searching. And it is not the answer that I seek necessarily, as much as the adventures had along the way. Because there is one thing I can say for certain. We had a great time in Massachusetts, and I cannot wait to return. And for those of you wondering about Martha's Vineyard, I said yes. This has been the first episode of Seekers of Otherworldly and Unknown Legends. I hope you have enjoyed it, and maybe even learned something new. If so, please like and subscribe, and join us next time as we travel to West Virginia for the Mothman Festival.